Welcome to another day of Bhagavad Gita Sadhana. It is so wonderful to have you. Uh, Beryl has moved through, bringing us some much needed rain. I was talking with somebody earlier this week about how what seems like a bad thing can turn into a good thing and vice versa. So I know for many people, Hurricane Beryl was destructive. Here, after a while, after it settled down, it brought much needed rain to this part of the country. So, is it good? Is it bad? That's one of the things we look at with the Bhagavad Gita, good and bad. Or is everything neutral and it's our judgment? And if we can learn to accept things as neutral and go beyond our judgment, this is said to get us closer to our true self. And that's the overarching theme for the year, Samatvam, being ourselves, our real, authentic selves, and being okay with that. But we've been talking about specific instances of Samatvam in Bhagavad Gita, and we're going kind of through it from start to finish again. We are in chapter 6, chapter on meditation, and today we'll focus on verse 17, and I'll chant it. Yoga becomes the destroyer of pain for one who moderates his diet, his recreation, and work, his sleep and wakefulness. So right off the bat, we've got an interesting definition of yoga as the destroyer of pain. In fact, if you read through the Gita, the definitions of yoga really have extremely little to do with what we consider yoga modern day in the West. In the previous verse, we learned about moderation. Yoga is not possible for anyone who eats too much or too little. And in this one, yoga is the destroyer of pain. If we can find a middle way, or maybe I should say a more inclusive way. And what struck me in this particular verse is being able to moderate recreation and work. Because in the Western society currently, as it is, lip service is given to work life balance. However, there's a definite preference for those who work. And this can go back to the puritanical roots and the idea of you don't work, you don't eat. And what the Gita says is truly, if you want to be yourself, you need to find a way to have that balance. Because if you're doing work that stresses you out and makes you sick, you're never going to be able to let your true self express. And also how you approach work as opposed to approaching recreation. Like, for example, most of us are like, okay, these several days a week from this hour to this hour, it's work. And nothing gets in the way of that. We arrange our lives around, but do we do the same thing for our recreation? And do we do work excessively now, thinking that's going to bring us excessive recreation someday? Like, do we put all our eggs in our retirement basket? I've known of people who've worked and they retire, their bodies have been under stress so much, their minds were under stress so much that they just can't physically or mentally enjoy retirement. I've even known, and you might have heard of this, some people, their whole identity becomes wrapped up in their work. They retire and their happiness dwindles and they die because there's no sense of purpose. A lot of us work for the idea of 2 weeks of, in the United States. If you're lucky, you get 2 weeks of vacation, right? And then we have to try to cram all that recreation. And if we don't cram the recreation in, then is 2 weeks really enough time to recover and recreate ourselves versus 50 weeks of working? You can answer that question. because there is a way that even in the West, we can balance ourselves out and find our true selves, which often gets shut up due to the demands of work or career. So, a story I heard quite some time ago that stuck with me, and it was about, and I don't necessarily think it's a true story, so don't go Googling for this, but it's an illustrative story about a man who lived in the Caribbean area. He was a fisherman. He would go out, fish, get some fish to sell at market, and get some fish to take home, and he and his wife would cook the fish and eat the fish together and have a relaxing evening thereafter. Well, a businessman, multi-million dollar corporation, was vacationing down in this area, and he got to be friends with the fisherman. He'd see him daily when he went out for his recreational activities. He would see the fisherman working, and he liked the fisherman and said, "I'm in business, and what I can do is set you up with your own fishing business." Well, the fisherman said, "Well, what would that involve?" "Well, we get you a nicer boat. In fact, maybe we get you a couple boats, get you a staff and a crew that you need to manage, and we really up your output. We make connections with the market. We get you to be the direct or sole supplier." And the fisherman said, "That sounds like a lot of time." And the businessman said, "Oh, yeah, you'll probably work 40, 50 hours a week, but then you'll get to retire." "Oh, and what will I be able to do when I retire?" "Oh, well, then you'll be able to fish a little every day. You'll be able to go home, spend more time with your wife, do things together like cook, relax every evening." And the fisherman said, "Well, that's what I have now." And the businessman said, "But you could have a lot of money. And then when you retire, you can do exactly what you want to do." And the fisherman said, "But I'm doing what I want to do. I might not have a lot of money, but every day it's like a little retirement. I get to go fishing." That can be illustrative of how we can approach work. Can we find work that feels like recreation to us? Or, I know that's hard to do, can we find an aspect of work that is recreating us? Um, I find my work to be very recreative, like helping people. I help with yoga, and yoga is something I do in my free time when I'm not working at providing yoga or bettering my skills relative to yoga. I'm doing yoga. I do yoga every day. I do this. I read about yoga, and I find it very sustaining. And I'm not working 18 hours a day and have a massive retirement income, but I feel like I have a little retirement almost every day because I get to work on my porch, watch nature. We get to interact with wonderful people. And what's really nice is if I don't feel well, I can rearrange my schedule. Um, and I used to work in a hospital, and I could have stayed there and had a lot more money and a retirement bonus, but I was working primarily the night shift. There's a reason they pay you more on night shift. I've seen people who spent their careers on night shift, and by the end, by the time they retire, their bodies are just, because you're not meant to stay up all night. Anyhow, so I encourage you to reflect on the work that you do. Can you find a way to make it recreational? When I was working at the hospital, one thing I would do is every week that I worked there, I bought myself a certain special treat, just as a reward, a pat on my back, and that helped recreate me also. So is there some way you can find recreation in work so that even now you don't have to wait 10, 20, 30, 40 years to finally do what you want to do? You have that opportunity even while you're in your work. Hmm. Let's do some practice. Balance pose to center the mind, and then we'll contemplate work and recreation. So, switch. Great. Doing physical balance poses also helps us find balance on other layers of our lives. Let's contemplate. What do you do for work? Even if you're retired, you might be doing some work. That's what happens, at least in this country. You still have to work to make some pocket change. Can you find some recreational aspect in your work? And if not, what then? If you realize that, what then? 5 minutes? Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope this practice was useful for you. Feel free to share any comments. Today's sadhana I'm dedicating to Buddy, who had a birthday yesterday. One of the smartest people I know, smart young person. Buddy, my wish for you is that you accumulate in your life as much wisdom as you have smarts, because if you do that, there will be nothing you can't accomplish. May you grow in wisdom as well. And until next time.